He said the Americans are not known to love Chinese. They're not known to love Muslims, but somehow they love Chinese Muslims a lot. I lived in Hong Kong during that period, and my wife and I no longer felt safe. I saw the way the social media was systematically demonizing the police, and they were extremely well behaved, but they were made to look as if they all had horns and tails, which was utterly not the case. But there was a game being played. Cui bono, who benefited from the Hong Kong unrest? It led to the re-election of Tsai Ing-wen, because all the pundits said that she would lose to Han Kuo-yu. Yeah. But because of what happened in Hong Kong, the whole table turned. On Taiwan, China has told Taiwan, you can keep the army. So long as you accept the idea of one China, you can interpret it the way you want. It means that you're not independent. And one day when we unite, maybe I'll drop PRC, you drop ROC, and we can call it China.
Morten Bergsma, I'm the director of CILRUP, the Center for International Law Research and Policy. We have an office here in Florence. Thank you for your brilliant presentation. In the question of Xinjiang and the Uyghurs, the US State Department and various British actors are saying that there has been genocide, whilst the leading scholars of the law of genocide, they say that there is no evidence, there is no proof, and that the US State Department should stop using this classification unless it produces the proof. By making use of such classifications as genocide and crimes against humanity, one also generates feelings of blameworthiness and that there is a threat from the Chinese government. What are your thoughts on the way the US and British actors use human rights terminology, the human rights narrative, and soft international law in the contest which you refer to between the United States and China?
Well, it's part of the information warfare that makes it very difficult for us sometimes to know what to believe and what not to believe. I first accompanied Lee Kuan Yew to Xinjiang in the year 2000, just before he stepped down as Prime Minister. It's okay. That's not Xinjiang. Yeah. I was surprised when I went there to find that road signs were in Roman characters, in Chinese characters, and in Arabic characters. So I asked accompanying Chinese officials, I said, when did that happen? Oh, he said Mao Zedong wanted it. In fact, when the communists took over, they restored the names of many places to their Uyghur names. But of course, the Chinese attitude is, you're a minority, you threaten me politically, I smash you. Like they did with Yaqub Bey in the 19th century, the Qing dynasty. But if you don't threaten me, then I'm very generous to you. In fact, I treat you better than Han people. So the population policy never applied to the Uyghurs. And that's why there are many more Uyghurs today in proportionate terms than Han Chinese and any other group. So there's certainly no physical genocide. In 2001 August, I went back to Xinjiang, the trade delegation, and I went to Kashgar. In Kashgar, I saw women in Central Asian burqas, which is a whole basket put on top of their head. I was shocked. I asked Chinese officials, I said, why do you allow this? They said, no, it's a custom. When I was in Urumqi, they took me horse riding. I can't ride a horse to save myself. So they said, no, don't worry. A young girl or boy will hop behind you, a Kazakh, and they'll gallop the horse. And it was very exciting. I tried to speak to her in my poor Mandarin. She could not understand me. So again, I asked the Chinese, I said, why aren't you teaching them Chinese? They said, no, they're nomads, we leave them alone. They did not realize then, it was 2 weeks before September 11, that the Salafis had been working on their minds. And from 2010 to 2015, there were a spate of terrorist incidents in China, to a point where the Han people in Xinjiang had to arm themselves. I also knew this from my cousins in China who used to go to Xinjiang, and then during that period they say it's no longer safe, and now they're all over Xinjiang again because peace has returned. So this whole story that there's genocide in Xinjiang, to me, does not reflect what's happening there. Yes, they have been draconian in making sure that Salafi influence is controlled in China. But all countries, including Singapore, face this problem. And it's interesting that no Muslim country today has condemned China on the Xinjiang policy. But when I was cruising in Croatia, someone told me what an Italian professor in Chengdu said. It's quite interesting. Take it in the right spirit, you know. He said the Americans are not known to love Chinese. They're not known to love Muslims, but somehow they love Chinese Muslims a lot. So that's my answer to your question.
Thank you very much. I'm Sonja Punkscher-Riekmann, a member of the External Advisory Board and of the Austrian Academy of Sciences. Thank you very much for an utterly inspiring speech. I have tried to keep track of Chinese development, reading a lot, but yeah, I will certainly not have reached the point of Matteo Ricci. I have a question which is a politico-philosophical question. How would you estimate the Chinese capacity to deal with discontinuities and to integrate that into the Taiwanese question? Perhaps you will now tell me that I don't understand anything of Taiwan, and I would take that. But it is a democratic state. Is that not the case, in your opinion? And if so, how would, in a Chinese reading, to be dealt with this democratic development as a different one as China has experienced, in order to perhaps assess the whole question of independence in a different way? Is that at all feasible, thinkable, etc.? We had a similar development with Hong Kong, hadn't we? Where there was this solution of one country, two systems. And, well, I don't think that China really lived up to that. But, yeah, perhaps you see this differently. Thank you.
China never accepted the Treaty of Nanjing, which ceded Hong Kong in perpetuity to the British as being a valid treaty. They never accepted that. The issue was not put to the test because a large part of Hong Kong, on the mainland side, was leased to Britain for 99 years. And even by British law, that land had to be returned. And when that land is returned, Hong Kong is no longer viable. In 1982, Margaret Thatcher visited Deng Xiaoping and mooted the idea of another 50 years of British rule. She was badly advised. Deng Xiaoping, with great accuracy, spat into a spittoon, you know. And Margaret Thatcher was so rattled when she left the Great Hall of the People, she tripped on the steps. And they knew that that's not negotiable. So in 1984, they had the Joint Declaration. Now, the Joint Declaration is asserted by the British as a treaty which bound China post-1997. China never accepted that. The Joint Declaration is called a Joint Declaration because you make your declaration, I make my declaration, we put it out together in order to facilitate a smooth handover on June 30th, 1997. It was not the treaty. If it was the treaty like the Treaty of Nanjing, it would have been called a treaty. So the Chinese are saying, once we have a smooth handover, sovereignty has returned to China. But China in this declaration said that it will promulgate a basic law, which it legislated in consultation with Hong Kong people, under which one country, two systems would last for 50 years. In that basic law, a national security law in Hong Kong must be enacted. So for 20 over years, it was never enacted, which means that in terms of performance, Hong Kong failed to keep up its side of the bargain. So the mainland then imposed national security law on Hong Kong, but still requires Hong Kong to make subsidiary legislation. And that's right now being done. I lived in Hong Kong during that period, and my wife and I no longer felt safe. I saw the way the social media was systematically demonizing the police, and the Hong Kong police is nothing like police in Paris or Los Angeles or New York. And they were extremely well behaved, but they were made to look as if they all had horns and tails, which was utterly not the case. But there was a game being played. Cui bono, who benefited from the Hong Kong unrest? It led to the re-election of Tsai Ing-wen, because all the pundits said that she would lose to Han Kuo-yu. Yeah. But because of what happened in Hong Kong, the whole table turned. So I have a very interpretation of Hong Kong, and it's based upon my own experience living there and the sort of things which were happening. That when they stormed the legislature, I think it was Nancy Pelosi who said, "Oh, what a glorious sight," until January 6th happened. Then it didn't look so glorious after that. So the double standards were so thick you could cut through it with a knife. Yeah. So on Taiwan, China has told Taiwan, you can keep the army. So long as you accept the idea of one China, you can interpret it the way you want. It means that you're not independent. And one day when we unite, maybe I'll drop PRC, you drop ROC, and we can call it China. Yeah. So it is an internal affair. It is one of reconciliation. You know, when Annalena Baerbock, the German foreign minister, visited China recently, State Councillor Wang Yi, who was a former foreign minister, he said something which to me was very moving. He said, "We supported German reunification. We hope Germany will support our reunification. Germany was divided because it was an aggressor. China was divided because it was a victim. So the moral cause of German reunification is on any balance greater than German reunification." I thought that was a very powerful message that Wang Yi put across, but it was hardly reported in your media.
偷偷告诉大家，我最近发现了新法宝 Royal Face 逆时奇迹系列，它有活肤露、全效精华，还有精华霜。尤其我皮肤比较偏干，所以我非常的注重保湿。保湿做得好，肌肤自然烹润。提亮肤色更年轻，抚平皱纹超有感，而且气色变好，用心保养，每天都更美一点。美吧。